Alrighty, hi. This is a bit of an unexpected and somewhat random video, but yeah, here it is. For a bit of context, I pretty frequently go through phases of becoming like extremely fixated on a particular thing for X amount of time. It could be, Jurassic Park, it could be fantasy novels, it could be whatever. And I've recently been slap bang in the middle of a fairly frequent one of these fixations, that being Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, basically everything Tolkien wrote. And as such, I have recently started doing a rewatch of the extended editions of the Peter Jackson Middle Earth films with my mum, because I haven't watched them in a while, and I like them. We've just finished watching the Hobbit trilogy. We finished watching Battle of the Five Armies 2 days ago now, and while we were watching it, a point came up that I made mention of, namely that the dwarves in the Hobbit films, and to a lesser extent in Lord of the Rings, but it's particularly noticeable in the Hobbit, don't feel big enough. They feel too short, they feel too slim, they don't feel dwarven enough. And this is a conversation that I've had with my dad quite a bit, because we have watched the Middle-earth movies together quite a bit more. We've watched the special features together multiple times, and we see pretty much eye to eye in that regard. But my mum and I have never talked about this before, and as such, haven't really kind of gone through it together. And so I thought it might be worth throwing together a sketch of sorts to visualize what I was talking about and help kind of get the point across. And from there, just kind of thought, hey, you know what? Some people might find it interesting, so why not throw it up on YouTube? Everything's content, right? So, initial disclaimer, it's kind of hard to make this super precise because just the way films are made, there's always perspective involved. It's always somewhat tricky to get a good bearing on how tall characters are compared to each other in any given shot. They're going to be in front of each other or behind each other or whatever. But I've done my best, and I think it illustrates the point reasonably well. So, here we have a basic layout of some of the characters from The Hobbit. We have Gandalf, we have Bilbo, we have Dory, and we have Dwalin. Dory and Dwalin specifically out of the dwarves, because Dory is the actor who plays him, whose name I constantly forget. Oh my god, why am I forgetting his name? It will come back to me, I'll flash it up on screen. He is the same height as Martin Freeman, and him and a couple of the other dwarves are visibly the same height as Bilbo in the films. Dwalin, because he and Thorin are the tallest of the dwarves. Both of their actors are 6'3"-ish. So, from there, using Bilbo as a reference for the dwarves and Gandalf as a reference for Bilbo, we can determine how tall the characters are. Assuming Gandalf is the same height as Ian McKellen, Gandalf is 5'11"-ish, Bilbo and the shortest dwarves are about 4 foot, and Dwalin and Thorin, the tallest dwarves, are 4'6". There are some issues with this. First one is Bilbo himself. Bilbo is a hobbit, and Tolkien gives us actually a pretty clear description of how tall hobbits are. Specifically, they are between 2 and 4 feet tall, with 4 being extraordinarily tall. The films specifically mention that Merry and Pippin hit 3'8" when they are with Treebeard in the second Lord of the Rings movie. And from there we can extrapolate a rough average of about 3'3", which makes sense. Hobbits are also referred to as halflings, which, means they should probably be about half the height of a human. So Bilbo is noticeably too tall. He's as tall as the absolute tallest hobbits ever. However, we also know that dwarves are explicitly taller than hobbits. It says in The Hobbit that hobbits are shorter than the bearded dwarves. That is a direct quote. And since they reach 4 foot at the absolute most, that suggests that dwarves are noticeably taller than 4 foot at the minimum. Because to say they are taller than the bearded dwarves, it clearly implies that it is visually apparent that they are taller. So at minimum, they should probably be kind of 4'4", possibly taller. So already the shortest dwarves, like Dory, are too short. Dwalin is 4'6", based on extracting his height from the heights of the other characters. At 4'6", he is a hair above what should be the dwarven minimum. Assuming there's about a 1 foot difference between the tallest and shortest dwarves, which, compared to the 2 foot found in hobbits, is conservative, the tallest dwarves would be around 5'4", which is a lot taller. That is shoulder height to Gandalf, as opposed to chest high. And 4'10" would therefore probably be average. Now, that is one thing. So all of the dwarves are too short, but on top of that, they are too skinny. Comparing the widths of Dwalin, Bilbo, and Gandalf, even though, again, it's kind of hard to tell because of clothing and what have you, Dwalin is much closer in width to Bilbo, and definitely narrower than Gandalf. The problem with this is that dwarves are explicitly stronger, tougher, and, by that logic, almost certainly heavier than humans. And for that to work for the audience, that really needs to come across visually. Even taking Dwalin's 5'4" height, which is, lower than probably one could expect the tallest to be, assuming 1 foot is a somewhat conservative difference between the tallest and shortest, he is still about the same width as Gandalf. Gandalf is a scrawny old man. Whatever else he may be, he is not a strong man. He is not a muscle man. He is not heavily built. He is pretty damn scrawny. Dwalin is, going off the characterization that we get for him in the films and the further characterization from the behind-the-scenes stuff, arguably the best and strongest fighter of the company of Thorin Oakenshield. So he should be one of the bulkiest dwarves, aside from, obviously, Bomba, who is insanely overweight. And even he looks to be about as bulky as Gandalf, possibly slightly thicker limbs, but that's it. In order to look believably more powerful than humans, the dwarves need to be broader and squatter. Their proportions need to be shorter but wider. They need bigger heads, longer torsos, shorter legs, bigger feet, thicker limbs, broader shoulders. Part of the height increase is actually just a logical thing. Making them a bit taller helps to ensure that they don't look comically wide. This is something that the film crew, the designers and the directors were actually aware of when making The Hobbit. If you watch the behind-the-scenes stuff for the first film, they go to great lengths to talk about the process of giving the actors fat suits and muscle suits and custom-made shoes in order to make them look bulkier. But they just don't go far enough, which, combined with the short height, makes the dwarves just look like small people. When it's just the dwarves and Bilbo, it works, because compared to Bilbo, the bigger dwarves tower over him. But when they're in a scene with humans, or God forbid orcs, which are a different kettle of fish, the orcs in, particularly in The Hobbit, are just too big. But regardless, when they're in the same scene, they just look small. They don't look intimidating, they don't look imposing, they don't look strong and heavy. They look like, adults who happen to be the size of, young teenagers. Making them broader actually also helps make them look shorter and more dwarven, because there's less of a difference between how wide their body parts are and how long they are. It makes all their body parts look comparatively shorter, so they look shorter and stockier, but they also look tougher, which solves a lot of visual problems for them. So, compared to what you have in the films, where they look just small, they should be wider, they should be heavier, they should be physically bulkier, and they should be taller. They should be, 5'4", 5'6" at the tallest. Like, Tolkien's dwarves are explicitly short, but not that short. So, I don't know, just something I thought people might find interesting. The difference in build, how the appearance changes with just shifting the proportions around, the disparities in height and all that. Thought, people might find it somewhat interesting. So, yeah, that's that. This has been a bit of a weird, rambly video, but hey-ho, it is what it is. Hope you enjoy. Bye.